There's just something special about being a kid at Christmas time. I mean, Christmas lights are strung everywhere, Christmas music is playing at all the stores, you have parties at school, and you get weeks off of school over Christmas break. There's even Christmas cartoons to enjoy. But by far, the biggest deal at Christmas as a kid, we all know it, it's the presents, right? Particularly because as a kid, you don't have a job. So Christmas, along with your birthday, is one of those occasions where you get stuff that you otherwise could never afford to buy on your own. Now, admittedly, I was always very particular about my Christmas gifts, but my mom was particular about what gifts she wanted to give, which meant that I would generally not get the main gifts on my list. So one year, she gave me a sweatshirt with a cartoon Santa Claus riding a motorcycle. I had so many questions about this gift, but mainly, why? Why did you give me this? And I just tried for years to convince my mom just to give me cash as a gift, but she thought that was just too impersonal. Gift cards? Same. The result was a lot of clothing that was not even remotely my style or my taste. Now, whether you got the gifts of your dreams or sweatshirts made to dry your car, we can all relate to the fact that Christmas comes with a feeling of expectation. There's another word that sometimes describes expectation, a word that we frequently hear this time of year, and that's the word hope. Whether we actually say this word out loud, each one of us has hope. We just hope for different things. Maybe you're hoping for something specific, or maybe you're hoping for rest after the busyness of the holiday season, or maybe you're hoping that you can get everything done in time. But sometimes these hopes, they just run maybe a little bit deeper. Like maybe you're hoping to meet that special person so you don't have to continue spending holidays alone. Or maybe you're hoping your family will finally get along on Christmas Day. Or maybe you're hoping to hear from a strange parent. Or maybe you're hoping that a loved one will get better. Like each one of us has something that we hope for. Some event, some relationship, something that we believe will make our lives better. But hope is more than just a word we throw around at Christmas time. Hope is an emotion. Like it's a state where a lot of us learn to live or desire to live. Like hope is a big part of being human. Like without hope, life would seem so dismal. So hope makes sense at Christmas, a season when expectation just seems to be heightened. Yet, what happens when the thing at the end of hope is nothing? Like what if the thing at the end of hope never shows up? What happens when a fervent hope is met with disappointment? Now, Solomon, an ancient king in the Bible who is considered the wisest man to ever live, he had this to say on the matter. Hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is a tree of life. And it's interesting that Solomon would write about hope being deferred, as his words would serve as a prelude to hope being deferred for his people. The nation of Israel knew a thing or two about hope being deferred. Like after these words of Solomon were recorded, the Jewish people spent centuries hoping and praying for the Messiah. The Messiah was the one the ancient scriptures foretold, the one who would deliver the people from their sins. But most Jews were concerned with being rescued from their enemies or from an oppressive government than being delivered from their sin. Centuries are a long time to wait. And during that time, sometimes the Jewish people followed God really well, and sometimes they didn't. And at one point, the people turned their backs on God so much and for so long that he let the temple be destroyed and the people taken captive. And decades later, some of the Jewish people returned back to Israel. They rebuilt the temple and began worshiping God there again. And time passed, and different nations and oppressors ruled over the people. As the years went by, they always held out hope for something better. They hoped for the Messiah, a descendant of David who would rebuild the nation of Israel, overthrow their oppressors, and ultimately rule the entire world. The Jews believed that the Messiah would come as a mighty warrior, a king. Maybe he would come into Jerusalem with a powerful army to defeat all of the enemies of Israel. But, no one exactly knew. But they had a pretty good idea what they thought he might look like and what he might do. But, as always, God typically has very different plans, and God had a very different plan for the Messiah. Listen to how God answered the hope of Israel. In the 6th month of Elizabeth's pregnancy, God sent the angel Gabriel to Nazareth, a town in Galilee, to a virgin pledged to be married to a man named Joseph, a descendant of David. The virgin's name was Mary. The angel went to her and said, "Greetings, you who are highly favored. The Lord is with you." Mary was greatly troubled at his words and wondered what kind of greeting this might be. But the angel said to her, "Do not be afraid, Mary. You have found favor with God. You will conceive and give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High. The Lord God will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over Jacob's descendants forever. His kingdom will never end." "How will this be?" Mary asked the angel, "since I am a virgin?" Like her fellow Jewish people, Mary was raised to believe and expect that God was going to come through for his people. And she probably thought that the grand unfolding of God's plan would have very little to do with her. But then the angel Gabriel arrived on the scene and provided a major plot twist. Mary was going to give birth to the Messiah. The angel answered, "The Holy Spirit will come on you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. So the Holy One to be born will be called the Son of God. Even Elizabeth, your relative, is going to have a child in her old age, and she who was said to be unable to conceive is in her 6th month. For no word from God will ever fail." "I am the Lord's servant," Mary answered. "May your word to me be fulfilled." Then the angel left her. Can you imagine? Like, here's a teenage girl who just found out she was going to have a baby, even though she was a virgin. And this baby was going to be the Messiah, Jesus. But even with all the questions that must have been running through her mind, she somehow managed to hear Gabriel say, "For no word from God will ever fail." And maybe, even more amazing, she managed to respond with, "I am the Lord's servant." If we want a picture of hope reworked or redirected, this is it. If we want to see what it looks like to hope in something bigger and not just hope for things to turn out the way we want, this is it. If Mary had been caught up in what her picture of the Messiah looked like or who he was supposed to be, there would have been some major problems. Like, hope would have turned so quickly into disappointment. Like, nothing was happening the way she was expecting. Mary was just a teenager planning her wedding to Joseph. But now she was doing all of this with a baby growing inside of her and a crazy story about an angel to back her up. And now for all of us, there's a point when hope, it meets reality. Like when we realize that life is not going to play out the way that we'd expected. And when that happens, we realize that if hope is to survive, it needs to be in something more than just our own expectations. In a moment, Mary had her life turned completely upside down. It's not like she walked away from that divine encounter and suddenly her life got easier. She could have allowed her expectations, her dreams, and her hopes to be crushed when it became clear that life wasn't going to look anything like she'd envisioned. But Mary realized that God was unveiling a plan that was much bigger than hers. So she let go of her plan. She exchanged her small plans for something bigger. She trusted the one who was at work in a bigger story, and she put her hope in him rather than in her own plans, her own hopes, or her own circumstances. Every one of us knows what it is like to hope, to expect, to anticipate, to pray for something, be it at Christmas time or any other time of the year, only to have reality fall short of our dreams. Hoping we would get the promotion only to find out we didn't make the cut. Hoping for a second date only to find she didn't have as much fun as you thought. Hoping for a functional family only to find things uncomfortable at Christmas dinner yet again. No one has to teach us how to hope, but it sure would be easy to quit doing it, to quit looking for something better when it seems like expectations go unmet again and again and again. Mary said that she was the Lord's servant, even if that meant enduring the unexpected. Mary learned to hope differently, not living in expectation of a result she had in mind, but in expectation of a God who was moving on her behalf. And I know that's hard to do. We have some big dreams, and we want that thing to happen that will change our lives. We want that relationship that will bring us that love we so desire, or those words from a spouse that will make our relationship with him or her so much more functional. We all want that. But what if we exchanged our view of hope with one that's bigger? Like, what if we, instead of placing all of our dreams and expectations in those things, What if we instead put our hope in the God who is bigger than all of that? Like, what if we learn to have hope despite whether our expectations were met or not? Because hope means trusting in a bigger picture. It means trusting in a bigger picture. So let me ask you this. Where does your hope lie? Is your confidence this Christmas in the ending you want? In the phone call, the present, the family, the vacation, the perfect gathering you're expecting? Or, like Mary, could you say, I am the Lord's servant? In other words, could your posture be, I have an idea of how I would like things to go, but if it doesn't end up that way, that's not where my hope lies. My hope doesn't die just because my expectations don't get met. My hope lies in the God who decides how I get there. My hope lies in the God who has the power to determine the means and the end. And my hope lies in Him and not in the way I think things should turn out. I know some of you have probably come in here today and your hope lies in some really small things. They may not feel small to you, but compared to what you could have, compared to what God could do with your life, they're small things. You have a lot riding on one letter, one gift, one response, one text message, one word, one relationship. But what if your hope was in something bigger? What if you exchanged your hope? Like, what if you decided that you're going to wait expectantly for God to do something bigger than your own plans and outside of your own expectations? Like, what would your life look like? Well, it would almost certainly look different than your plans. But it will also be so much more of an adventure than what even the most active imagination could ever dream up. And that's something worth placing your hope in. So what it comes down to is this. Whose hope are you going to trust in? Yours or God's? Is there any place in your life where you are hoping in an outcome, in circumstances and situations more than you are hoping in the God who is behind it all? Like, are you willing to settle for placing your hope in something small? Or are you willing to place your hope and trust in the one who knows the entire story, who knows every outcome, the one who is worthy of your trust? And the choice is yours, and the choice is mine. You can live your life based on that one outcome, that one word, or that one relationship, or you can exchange your hope for something more by surrendering your expectations to a big, mysterious, and loving God.